Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive? Today we're looking at how emerging tech is totally changing the game in humanitarian aid.
Uh-huh.
Like, picture this 3D printed shelters appearing in disaster zones,
Yeah,
or AI predicting famines even before they happen.
it's crazy.
Our main source for this is a 2024 study from RAND Europe.
Right.
They're a nonprofit research organization doing some super interesting work in this area.
Yeah, they're really at the forefront of a lot of this stuff.
So get ready to learn how tech is revolutionizing how we respond to crises.
Yeah, and what it all means for the future of aid.
For sure.
It's really an exciting time to be looking at all this. The humanitarian landscape is changing so rapidly.
It really is.
We're seeing some seriously big challenges, climate change, resource scarcity,
Right.
and these increasingly complex emergencies.
Absolutely. And the RAND report really paints this picture of a future where these challenges are only going to get more intense.
Yeah, it can be a little overwhelming to think about.
For sure.
But the study also highlights some pretty incredible innovations that offer us some hope.
I'm glad to hear that. So tell me more about these innovations. What are some of the specific megatrends that RAND identified as shaping humanitarian needs?
Well, one of the biggest is rapid urbanization.
Makes sense with all the displacement happening.
Exactly. And then there are all these shifting health challenges.
What kinds of things?
Well, think about climate change displacing entire communities. And those people are often forced into cities that are already struggling to cope.
Yeah, it's like this domino effect. One crisis feeds into another.
Exactly. It creates these incredibly complex situations for aid organizations to navigate.
And that's where technology comes in, I guess.
Exactly. It's all about bridging that gap between the growing needs and the limited resources we have.
I see. So one of the most exciting areas is advanced manufacturing, right?
Absolutely.
You mean like 3D printing?
Yes, it's already making a huge difference.
I can imagine.
Picture this. You're in a disaster zone. Everything is chaos. Supply chains are disrupted.
Makes sense.
And you desperately need medical supplies.
Right.
Well, 3D printing can actually create those supplies on the spot.
Wow, that's incredible. It's like having a mini factory that you can just airdrop into a crisis zone.
Exactly.
That's wild. I remember reading about Field Ready,
Oh, yeah.
an NGO that's doing just that.
They're doing fantastic work.
They're using 3D printing to produce essential medical tools in places like Haiti, Nepal, and Syria.
Exactly. And it's not just medical supplies either. They've printed things like wrenches,
Really?
spare parts for water filtration systems.
Wow.
It's really incredible how adaptable the technology is.
I bet. So what other examples are out there?
Well, the RAND report highlights Handicap International. They're using 3D printing to create custom prosthetics for people in really remote areas.
That's awesome.
They actually have these portable 3D printers that can be taken directly to people who need them.
So they can literally bring the tech to the people who need it most.
It's literally changing lives.
That's really powerful. It must be so empowering for someone to regain their mobility because of technology like that.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond that individual impact, too.
In what way?
Well, this kind of decentralized manufacturing could completely change how we think about disaster preparedness and response.
How so?
Imagine a network of local hubs, all equipped with 3D printing capabilities. They could quickly produce all sorts of essential goods, reducing reliance on traditional supply chains.
Right, because those are often disrupted during emergencies.
Exactly. It's all about creating a more resilient system, almost like a safety net at the community level.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a really fascinating idea. But of course, no technology is perfect.
That's true.
So what are some of the challenges that come with using 3D printing in humanitarian work?
Well, quality control is crucial. You really have to make sure that these 3D printed products, especially medical devices, meet all the necessary safety standards.
Of course, you don't want a 3D printed splint falling apart when someone needs it most.
Exactly. And then there are the regulatory hurdles to overcome, too. Right. Different countries have different rules and regulations about medical devices and other products.
So navigating all that red tape can be tricky.
It can be. And then another challenge is ensuring that these technologies are accessible and affordable.
Especially for organizations working in low-resource settings.
Exactly. 3D printers can be expensive, and then you need to train people to use them effectively.
Right. It's a reminder that technology is only one part of the solution.
For sure.
You need the infrastructure, the training, the support systems in place to really make it impactful.
Absolutely. It's about integrating technology into a holistic approach to humanitarian aid.
So it's not just about the tech itself.
Yeah,
It's about how we use it.
exactly. But speaking of impactful technology, let's shift gears for a minute and talk about early warning systems.
Oh, yeah. Those systems that can predict disasters before they happen,
You got it.
those always seem kind of like something out of a sci-fi movie to me.
I know, right? It does sound futuristic,
It does.
but it's becoming more and more of a reality.
It's pretty cool. So how do they work?
Well, these systems gather and analyze tons of data.
Okay.
Everything from weather patterns to seismic activity
Wow.
to identify potential threats and issue warnings.
So it's kind of like those hurricane tracking maps we see on the news.
Yeah, similar but much more sophisticated.
Okay.
Think about it. We're already using weather data to predict hurricanes and issue evacuation orders.
Right.
Early warning systems just take that concept to the next level.
Okay, see.
For instance, in the Philippines, they've developed a system called flood tags
Okay.
that analyzes social media data to predict floods.
What? Social media?
Yeah, people tweet about rising water levels or blocked roads.
Wow.
And the system uses that information along with traditional flood monitoring techniques to provide really localized warnings.
So it's like crowdsourcing disaster prediction, tapping into the collective wisdom of the community.
Exactly. And there are so many other cool examples.
Like,
In Cambodia, they have a network of solar-powered water gauges that transmit real-time data on river levels, which is crucial for predicting floods.
so we're using technology to connect with and understand the natural world in ways we never could before.
Exactly.
And I love that these systems are often tailored to the specific needs of different communities.
Absolutely. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
For instance, in some remote communities where internet access is limited,
Yeah?
early warning systems might rely on simpler technologies,
Like what?
things like radio broadcasts or text messages to get the word out.
Makes sense. It's about using the right tool for the job, adapting the technology to fit the context.
Exactly. And there's a big global push right now to make early warning systems accessible to everyone on the planet by 2027.
Wow, that's ambitious.
It is. It's a massive undertaking, but the potential impact is incredible.
I can imagine. Just think if everyone, no matter where they live, had access to timely and accurate warnings about disasters
It would save so many lives.
and reduce the devastation caused by these events.
Exactly. It's a really powerful vision.
It is. But I'm sure there are challenges too.
Of course. Implementing these systems in low and middle income countries takes significant resources, infrastructure, and local expertise.
Right. It's not just about the technology itself.
For sure.
It's about building the capacity to use it effectively and sustainably.
Exactly.
But even with all those challenges, the potential benefits are huge.
They are.
Early warning systems are a prime example of how technology can empower us to anticipate and prepare for the unpredictable.
I couldn't agree more. Well said. And speaking of navigating complex environments, let's move on to another fascinating area, camp monitoring systems.
You mean those systems that are used to manage refugee camps?
Exactly.
I've seen photos of those camps.
Yeah.
They're massive.
They are.
They look incredibly challenging to manage.
They really are. Imagine thousands of people all displaced from their homes living in these temporary shelters,
Yeah.
all needing access to food, water, sanitation, healthcare.
It sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It can be.
Yeah.
So that's where camp monitoring systems come in.
I see. So how do they help? What kind of technologies are we talking about?
Well, it's a whole combination of things: sensors, cameras, drones, even satellite imagery.
Wow. So it's about bringing a level of organization and efficiency to what can often be a very chaotic and unpredictable environment.
Exactly. And the RAND report highlights some really interesting examples.
Like what?
For instance, in Jordan's Zaatari refugee camp, UNICEF implemented a smart waste management system
Okay.
that uses sensors to monitor garbage levels and optimize collection routes.
It's like bringing smart city technology to a refugee camp.
Exactly.
That's really cool. It shows how technology can address even the most basic but essential needs in a refugee camp.
Exactly.
Are there any other examples like that?
Yeah, another fascinating project is the EU's Basilis project.
What's that?
It focused on using wearable technology to improve the safety of humanitarian workers in camps.
Interesting.
They developed this system that allows workers to discreetly trigger an alarm if they feel threatened or unsafe.
Wow, so they can call for help without drawing attention to themselves.
Exactly. They even have panic buttons integrated into their wearable devices.
That's amazing. I've heard so many stories about the risks humanitarian workers face,
Yeah, it can be really dangerous.
especially in those challenging environments. It's great to see technology being used to protect them.
It is, but of course with all these sensors and cameras, there are some privacy concerns as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a sensitive issue.
It is, and the report acknowledges that potential for surveillance and misuse of data.
Right.
It's crucial to strike that balance between using tech to improve safety and efficiency while respecting the privacy and dignity of the refugees.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's about ensuring that technology is used to empower and protect people, not control them.
Exactly. And that brings us to the heart of the ethical considerations around all these emerging technologies.
Right.
We really need to be mindful of the potential consequences and ensure that we're using them responsibly and ethically.
I agree. It's a really important conversation to be having.
It is, and it's one that we'll continue to explore as we delve deeper into the world of humanitarian tech.
Okay. Sounds good. I'm ready for more.
Great. Let's jump in.
We're back and still digging deep into the world of humanitarian tech. I gotta say, I'm still thinking about those camp monitoring systems.
Yeah, they're pretty incredible.
All that data they gather. It's amazing.
It is, but it also raises some important questions.
Right, like how do we use all that data responsibly? Especially when we're talking about vulnerable people like refugees.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. It's so easy to get caught up in all the cool technology and forget about the human side of things.
Totally. We need to make sure that the technology is serving humanitarian principles.
Absolutely.
Not the other way around.
Right, and that's where data security and privacy become so important.
For sure. So how do we address those concerns?
Well, the RAND report actually highlighted a technology that could help with this blockchain.
Blockchain? Like the technology behind cryptocurrency?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't really see the connection to humanitarian work.
I know it might seem like a stretch.
It does.
But blockchain has these unique features that make it surprisingly well suited for certain aspects of humanitarian aid.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Okay, so imagine a secure digital identity stored on a blockchain.
Okay.
This could give refugees control over their own personal information.
I see.
And make it easier for them to access aid, financial services, even educational opportunities.
So instead of relying on physical documents that could get lost or stolen,
Right.
they'd have this digital record that's both secure and accessible.
Exactly. It's like giving them a digital passport to a better life.
That's a great way to put it. And it could help streamline aid distribution too, right?
Absolutely. By tracking donations and supplies on this tamper-proof ledger, you can minimize corruption and ensure that those resources actually reach the people who need them most.
That makes a lot of sense. Transparency and accountability are such huge issues in humanitarian aid.
They are.
I've heard so many stories about aid getting diverted or stolen.
It's a real problem.
It's heartbreaking.
It is. And blockchain could really help to address that by making the entire process more transparent and traceable.
So it's like a digital trail that everyone can
Yes,
follow.
exactly. But let's be realistic here.
Okay.
Implementing blockchain in a refugee camp where internet access might be spotty
Right.
and digital literacy can vary so widely,
Yeah,
it sounds like a logistical nightmare.
it does. But are there any examples of this actually working?
There are actually several pilot projects already underway,
Really?
and the early results are pretty encouraging.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
So tell me about one of these projects. How does it work in practice?
Well, the UN World Food Program has been using blockchain to distribute aid to Syrian refugees in Jordan.
Okay, I've heard of that program.
They've created this system that allows refugees to use iris scans to purchase food at participating stores.
Wow, so no more paper vouchers that can get lost or stolen.
Exactly. It's more secure, and it gives refugees more control over their purchases.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But I can't help but think back to what you said earlier about the risk of surveillance with camp monitoring systems.
Yeah.
With blockchain tracking every transaction.
Uh-huh.
Couldn't that make those concerns even worse?
It's a valid concern. The key is to design these systems with privacy in mind right from the start.
Okay.
Refugees need to have control over their data, understand how it's being used,
Right.
and have the option to opt out if they want to.
So it's not just about the technology itself. It's about how we use it and the safeguards we put in place.
Exactly. And there are tools that can help with this. Remember those privacy-enhancing technologies we talked about earlier?
Oh, yeah, like the data encryption and the anonymization stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Those can actually be integrated with blockchain systems to help protect sensitive information.
It's like having these digital guardians watching over our data.
I like that analogy.
So blockchain is one potential solution for improving data security and transparency. But what about the bigger challenge of coordination in humanitarian work?
Yeah.
I mean, getting everyone on the same page during a crisis.
It's tough.
NGOs, governments, local communities.
It can be a real mess.
So how can technology help with that?
Well, think of it like social media for humanitarian work.
Okay.
There are these platforms that act as central hubs for sharing information, coordinating activities, even managing resources.
So like a digital command center for disaster response.
Exactly. And these platforms can provide real-time maps showing the location of aid supplies, the status of infrastructure, the needs of different communities.
Wow. So everyone involved in the response effort can see the big picture
Exactly.
and make more informed decisions.
Precisely. And some platforms are even using AI to analyze all that data.
AI again. Huh. It really is everywhere.
It is, and it can provide insights that would be really difficult for humans to see on their own.
Okay, so what kinds of insights are we talking about?
Well, they can identify patterns in disease outbreaks,
Okay.
predict the movement of refugee populations,
Wow.
even flag potential supply chain bottlenecks.
So AI can help us anticipate and address problems before they even arise.
Exactly. But of course, we need to be careful here.
Wait, those ethical concerns.
Exactly. How do we make sure these AI systems are used fairly?
And don't end up discriminating against certain groups of people.
It's a critical question. And the key lies in training AI algorithms on diverse and representative data sets.
Okay.
And constantly monitoring them for biases that might creep in.
Because even if an algorithm isn't intentionally designed to be biased,
Right.
it can still perpetuate existing inequalities if we're not careful.
Absolutely. And human oversight is crucial too.
Right. We can't just let algorithms make life or death decisions without any human judgment.
Exactly. We need to keep humans in the loop. Ethical considerations need to be front and center.
So it's about humans and AI working together, each playing to their strengths.
Exactly. And transparency is key. We need to understand how these algorithms are making decisions and hold them accountable if they're not acting fairly.
Because at the end of the day, technology is a reflection of our values. And we need to be mindful of the values that we're embedding in these systems.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We're shaping the future with these technologies.
We are.
And it's our responsibility to make sure that future is one where technology serves humanity,
I like that.
not the other way around. So speaking of shaping the future, are there any organizations or initiatives that are really leading the charge on ethical and responsible tech in this field?
That's a great question. I'm curious to hear about that too. And we're back for our final look at humanitarian tech. And honestly, I'm feeling pretty inspired by all the innovation we've talked about.
It is exciting to see how much is happening in this field.
But at the same time, I'm also aware of all those big global challenges.
Yeah, those are definitely not going away anytime soon.
And it feels like they're only going to get more complex in the years to come.
You're right, and the RAND report really emphasizes that.
It does.
Yeah, they actually dedicate a whole chapter to what they call the future operating environment.
Okay, what does that even mean?
Well, basically, it's all about the trends and forces that are going to shape the humanitarian landscape in the coming years.
So like trying to predict the future of humanitarian work.
Kinda, yeah.
Yeah.
They're looking at all the big things that are going to impact how aid is delivered and how organizations respond to crises.
Okay, so let's put on our futurist hats for a minute.
Right, I'm game.
What kind of world are we looking at? And how is it all going to impact humanitarian work?
Well, the report highlights some pretty major megatrends that are already reshaping our world.
Okay, like what?
Climate change, of course.
Oh, I see.
Resource scarcity, urbanization, and technological advancements.
Yeah, those are all huge.
They are, and the thing is they're all interconnected.
Right, like one big tangled web.
Exactly. And they're going to create this ripple effect impacting everything.
Like what kinds of things?
Well, think about migration patterns, for example. Climate change is going to displace millions of people.
It already is.
Exactly. And those people are often forced to migrate to cities that are already overcrowded.
Right, putting even more strain on resources.
Exactly. It increases the risk of disease outbreaks and can even lead to social unrest and conflict.
It's a lot to think about.
It is. It's not just one big challenge, but a whole bunch of interconnected challenges.
That are all going to make humanitarian work even more demanding.
For sure. But it also highlights the need for really innovative solutions.
And proactive strategies.
Absolutely. We can't just sit around and wait for these crises to happen.
We need to anticipate them and prepare for them as best we can.
Exactly. And that's where technology can really make a difference.
Okay, so how can tech help us with that?
Well, we've already talked about how AI and data analysis can be used to predict disasters and forecast needs.
Right.
And as those technologies become more sophisticated, they're going to become even more valuable.
So we can be more proactive and less reactive.
Exactly. It's about shifting from responding to emergencies to preventing them whenever possible.
I like that idea. It could potentially save so many lives.
And resources.
But it's not just about predicting the future, is it? It's about adapting to it.
You got it. And one of the key areas where we need to adapt is in how we deliver aid.
What do you mean?
Well, traditional models of humanitarian aid can be pretty slow and bureaucratic.
Okay.
Very top-down. Decisions are often made far away from the people who are actually being affected.
Right. So how do we change that?
We need to find ways to make aid delivery more agile, more flexible, and more responsive to the needs of local communities.
So moving away from that one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. We need solutions that are tailored to specific contexts and cultures.
And how can technology help us do that?
Well, for example, mobile technology can be used to provide direct cash assistance to people in need,
Okay.
giving them more control over how they use those funds.
Right, because sometimes people know what they need better than anyone else.
Exactly. And digital platforms can connect people with local service providers, fostering more community-based solutions.
It's about empowering people, isn't it?
Exactly. Giving them the tools and resources they need to rebuild their own lives.
And technology can help us do that in ways we never could before.
Absolutely. But as we embrace all these new approaches, it's important to remember that technology is just a tool.
Right, not a magic bullet.
Exactly. It's up to us to use it wisely and ethically.
And always keep the human impact in mind.
Couldn't agree more. Because ultimately, humanitarian work is all about people.
It is.
It's about alleviating suffering, restoring dignity, and fostering hope.
Well said. And technology can help us do that.
But only if we use it with compassion and a deep commitment to human rights.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. The future of humanitarian work is full of challenges.
Definitely.
But it's also full of possibilities. And as we navigate this complex world, we need to keep our focus on the human element.
Absolutely. Using technology to amplify our compassion and our commitment to building a more just world for everyone.
Beautifully put. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of humanitarian tech. We hope you learned something new and are feeling inspired to explore how you can be a part of this incredible movement. Until next time, keep exploring and keep learning.